Welcome to Tea Time with Shaylee and Amber. I'm Shaylee Evans, and I'm a life coach for pets and their people. I'm a truth seeker, and it's my passion to empower others and to give animals a voice along the way.
I'm Amber Leidick, and I've been a performance horse trainer focused on behavioral issues for over 20 years. My current passion is creating impactful in-person and online events and collaborating with professionals to be on the leading edge of positive change in the horse industry.
We are two friends invested in theta healing, belief system work, animal communication, and any resources that benefit human-animal partnerships. So turn up the volume and let's dive into the Great Awakening, brought to you by Our Horses. Hello, thanks for tuning in with us today. We're excited to chat about suffering or the lack thereof. If this is your first time listening to us, buckle up. If you are back, we're so grateful that you listen to us and care about what we have to say. And please leave us a review and like and share and subscribe and all the things. We thought it would be fun, actually, moments before this podcast started. Amber just had to free a little bird from some netting.
Just out of nowhere. There he
Just out of
is.
nowhere. Yeah. And it's funny because, well, I don't know if funny is the correct word, but we were just talking about suffering and how we're not wanting to engage in the suffering of others, and how there's like so much good in the world and yet so much suffering. And people like to use pain and suffering like interchangeably. Like they think that they are the same, when really pain is just the feeling and suffering is the story we create around the pain. And so we thought it would be like a fascinating topic to kind of dive into. We just did a call in our tea house membership about end of life for our animals, and we dove into all the intricacies of, end of life and the afterlife and things like that. And one of the things that we brought up was how animals can be in pain and not suffering, and they are such beautiful examples of that. And it just makes you realize that as humans, we really do like to connect to each other through suffering. And I think it starts with empathy. Like it starts out as, oh, I can relate to you, or I'm, empathetic of that. But even if you just think about, so I was thinking about this the other day, I'm curious what you have to say. A friend of mine called me with like a problem that she was having, and immediately I was like, oh man, I feel so bad for her. But because I've been practicing so much awareness, I caught myself in that moment and I was like, no, I don't feel bad at all. I actually was very peaceful prior to this conversation. I'm peaceful now. Like I truly in my body don't feel bad, but I can empathize. So then I changed it and I was like, oh, I'm expressing. Then I was like, what would I say instead? Like, oh, I'm expressing concern for her, or I can empathize with her. But even in those moments where it's like, oh, I feel bad for you, having a conversation with someone and allowing myself to be taken out of that piece that I was in and experience momentary suffering while I'm empathizing. Where do I want to go with this? I feel like it's so important to be aware when we're doing that, so that we can be like, wait, do I actually want to feel this way? Do I actually want to And so what do you think the fine line is in like listening to someone, empathizing, but not getting like sucked in?
Mhm. I think people forget how powerful words are and how often you will say, I feel so bad for that person. I feel so bad for. You're literally like, I feel so bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wow. Like, no, don't. Because there's no amount of bad that you can feel that's going to make their situation better. It's only going to pull you down as well. And if you're both feeling bad, then no one's really supporting anyone. And I think that it does stem from yeah, being empathetic, like, wow, that if I was in that situation, if I was in your shoes, that would feel really hard. But I think people need to be careful with that, because I think that is how we get sucked in. I think we're sort of raised that way too, where as a parent watching your child fall down, and immediately everybody's like, oh no, and I feel so bad, and oh, are you okay? And it comes back to like kind of the pity vibe when someone's having a challenging thing. Like, I think the difference in my ability to do like a coaching session with someone is not what I'm saying or the advice I'm giving or the structure within it, but it's the energy behind it where I don't really have pity for people because pity to me feels like you're not going to be able to figure this out. I feel
Hmm.
bad for you because you are going to suffer endlessly with this problem. And I feel bad for you versus, damn, that's really hard. But like and I don't necessarily go, you're going to be fine. But the energy is like, you are going through this for a reason. So I don't even want to take this away from you. I don't even want to stop this process happening. I have a person in my life that just found out some really intense betrayal in their life. And while I can empathize because I've felt that before, I have felt that level of betrayal and been like, damn, like that just like hurts your heart. And you're angry and you're pissed and you're grieving a friendship and you're like, what the fuck? And then you're confused and there's all these things that go on. So I have felt that, but I also know on the other side of that very deep, intense betrayal that I have had, my lived experience is like, oh, the relief that I have now that I have cleared that out of my life, made space for people that honor me, respect me, are loyal to me. So I can see the big picture, right? So you can hold the space for somebody and be empathetic and go, yeah, that does suck and it does feel really bad and like kind of shitty right now. I don't feel bad for you because I know that
Hmm.
there's something there for, but you can't always say that, right? So I think energetically is the line, and it gives you an opportunity to ask yourself, why do I want to feel bad? Why do I not think that person can pull themselves out? Why do I think this is, something that, how does that resonate with me? And where am I doing that in my life where I can support myself more? Because that's usually what it's about. If you're feeling bad for someone, there's something you're feeling bad about yourself. So it's like an invitation to go internal and get curious about that experience. Because I think it does say a lot about you if and I think default we will say that, oh, I feel so bad. But
Hmm.
if the awareness is there, you can stop yourself. Do I really feel bad? Like why?
Yeah,
Why
that
do I
was me
feel
the other day, and
bad?
I was like, "Wait, no, I don't. I don't feel bad at all. I feel actually, I'm kind of laughing. No, I'm just kidding. I'm, but yeah, it's just so funny how we forget the power in our words and just that very simple thing, right? Like, or even so we know that emotions are what helps us create a strong momentum and emotion paired with the visual. So when someone's talking to you about their suffering, their situation, and what happened to them, and all this, and you're talking for like, 3 minutes or more, and you're like visualizing what's happening to them, and you're captivated by the story, and your heart is going, literally, you are putting your own momentum in the direction. As soon as you let yourself get emotionally swept up in that conversation and you're visualizing like what that meant for them, you are getting pulled in that direction vibrationally and you're actually calling that energy in, which is why it's so important for us to be mindful of our friendships and our conversations and the environments around us. And I've been telling Amber, like, I'm not relating to people suffering right now. Like, I don't. I had someone message me the other day and it was this whole story. And at some point, like, especially because I'm really trying to change that. And like, it can be a hard thing to do because there's a lot of it around us. And so the moment you decide like I'm really not like I'm going to be as conscious as possible not to engage in suffering, half of your conversations are like deleted. Like you can't it's so interesting. You're really like having to revamp things and our animals are teaching us so much too about how pain and suffering are truly not the same thing because they can experience pain and systemic illness and still have this like life force, vitality, zest for life. Like they can be, it's the reason why the little old dog won't use the ramp that you built for them because you feel suffering in them going up the stairs and they are going to figure out how to get up the stairs and to continue doing what they want to do and then they are moving on with their lives, or it's the same reason why they won't eat the diet that you want them to eat or whatever the case may be because they're just kind of taking care of their body in stride. And I was laughing telling Amber that we're remodeling our bathroom right now, just the floor. Thank the gods because we have like this hideous black tile in there and has been in there since we moved in, and we've just prioritized other things. We like to be outside, so we're outside all the time, and then we come inside and we're like, oh yeah, oh yeah, our floor is ugly. And so we're finally doing it. And I did not have the right tools, but I'm one of those people that working on patience, you guys. And I didn't have the right tools, but I was going to get it done in that moment. So I hit my hand like a million times. And it's just so funny how I recognized that I could create a story around it in in that moment. Like I would hit my hand and I'd be like, "Ow, dang it." And then keep going. But then like the fifth or sixth time I hit my hand, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I keep hitting my hand and I don't have the right tool." Then I started to create the suffering, right? But I recognized that I was doing that. And then I was all proud of myself. No, don't have any suffering with this. And then my husband got home and he's like, "How's your day?" And I'm like, "Good, except I hit my hand a bunch of times." And it's like, that's in the past, okay? It's not even relevant to our current experience, but it's like, what happened in my day? How can people relate to us? And it's funny because that's a pattern that we do as humans. And why do we do that? Because we show how we care for each other by saying, "How was your day?" Which is basically like, "Hey, can you recall the past for me right now and tell me all the things that happened in the past today?" Why do we do that?
Because I think it's just relatable and it's something that you can talk about that's like, from your standpoint, certain, right? And the future is uncertain. And we like to stay away from that as humans because survival wants us to draw on the past so that we know that there's patterns there. That's how we stay alive by like looking at the
Mhm.
past. So we think, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that it's all truth. Like bad things can happen. It doesn't mean they're going to continue to happen, but it's like we draw our experience and how we move through life by pulling from our past. So I feel like there's information there. And for our human mind, it's like this is how we can keep ourselves safe, right? That's like all our brain is always trying to do is stay safe, stay safe, stay safe. So if we can find what's relevant, and go, how can I relate this to you? But people do really relate to each other through suffering. And I think there's something too, like when we talk about people that will have like, yeah, there's like 20 people I can call at any time of day. And if I have an emergency, then they'll come and, pick me up on the side of the road but then you ask how many people you have that you can call with like really good news. Like I just made all this money, or I just got in this new relationship and it's actually really great. Or I just, there's less people that are willing to celebrate with you because it will pull on their own inadequacies. And I think that it will then highlight that for them. So when you talk about being careful with like who your friends are and who you tell your stories to, um, I think that there's a lot of that that's sort of mixed in and we're also taught as children, don't boast, like be modest, don't want to make people feel bad. And it's like it's so conditioned into us from very early on. And even like when you're a child and you fall down and people, oh God, what's wrong? It's like, well, I'm crying because it hurts. There's nothing wrong. That's where the stories start. When I feel pain, something is wrong and it needs to be fixed. No, it just hurts. What can we do about it? Let's move on. You know what I mean? So I feel like just from a very early age, we're conditioned to find the problems, to be able to avoid the problems. But what we don't realize is when we're focusing on the problems, we're creating more of that story so you can have more of that lived experience, which is really hard to explain to people, especially because most of it is going on in your subconscious. Like, and then you go back to the awareness when you start to find those patterns. Why do I keep having this relationship over and over? Why do I keep getting fired from my job? Why do I find myself in jobs that I freaking hate? Like, why do I keep finding homes that make me feel lonely or are cold or dirty or I get evicted? Or if you guys have patterns going on in your life, there is a reason. It is not just
Hmm.
you are a victim of this crazy circumstance. Like literally anything that brings up some sort of quote unquote suffering for you, you have a story around XYZ and it makes you feel this way and you feel that victim mentality coming on. Like the external circumstances have control over my life lived experience. And then there's something there for you to take your power back within. And that is the indication. Like, because it isn't going to be at the forefront of your mind until you start understanding, like, I have full responsibility over my experience. And it sucks because you also get to see when you're slacking because life shows
Yeah.
you. So it's this radical responsibility that's very uncomfortable, which we know as humans we don't like. It's very uncertain. We don't really like that either, and so it's counterintuitive to do it, but that's where your quote unquote, for those of you listening, suffering can end when you kind of take charge of that and go, wait a minute, I'm not going to continue to tell the story of XYZ because it is in the past. It's good to be aware of, like, maybe if, say, this one person did this thing to you, good. Make the decision to not confide in them, or don't, loan them money, or don't, rely on them for anything. Great. It's just information. You don't need to keep telling the story of it. You can take the lesson from it and integrate it and use it as information, but don't tell your sister, tell your freaking friend, tell your coworker. It's like you're just pulling more of that energy back in, and you're going to have more of those experiences because you're literally shouting to the universe, like, more and more
Yeah.
and more. You got
And
16
people,
seconds.
oh yeah. And people do that with their animals all the time too. Like, they'll tell me, well, I got bucked off 2 years ago and I broke this and now I'm afraid of this. And it's like we really are living in our past, and our animals are such good highlighters of like what's going on vibrationally. And right now I'm kind of in that a little bit with my Philly Fern, because she it's actually kind of fascinating. So became, I made the decision that I was going to start working with her like every day and start getting her like ready to be ridden. As soon as I made that decision, the next day she was lame. And so I was like, oh, there's some stuff to like learn here. And I thought it was cool because I was just like, yeah, she'll bounce back. Whereas my old mindset would be like, oh my gosh. And it's not that I don't like, we're not telling you guys, like, don't use the laser or the ice or whatever. Like, you still have to help the 3D body if you know or you feel inspired to do it or whatever. But, like, not getting sucked into because, um, so like when it first happened, I was like, well, I'm going on vacation. I'm preoccupied. I asked my land to heal her foot. By the time we got back, she was sound again. Had a couple sessions with her. She was great. Yesterday, she is in raging heat and got mounted by Biggie, who is my biggest buffalo. Like, she's literally like 15 hands and like a little stick. Like, she's the baby. And he's like 2,000 pounds of like big freaking 16 3/4 horse bot. Like, he's a hoss. And he also doesn't have a strong hind end. So I would just imagine like him mounting her and just like laying his body on her. But so then she was lame again. And I'm like, oh, great. Like, now she's lame again. And my mind instantly wanted to be like, um, dang it. Like, this is my up and coming riding horse. I really am hoping to ride her in the future. Like, what if she doesn't heal? What if she doesn't recover? And if you can catch yourself in those moments, and because those moments will come up because we instantly relate it back to us. Like, her being lame right now has nothing to do with me. And yet I'm like, how could this affect me? Like, oh gosh, I want to ride her and all these things. And we do that to our horses specifically. Like, we don't do it as much to our other animals, but to our horses, anytime they get hurt, we automatically use it as an excuse to create suffering in our lives because we're relying so heavily on our horses to bring us happiness, or these external circumstances to bring us happiness, which is why if you've listened to us at all, we talk a lot about creating that inner happiness so that your animals don't have to bring forward that energy for you, and also so they don't have to get hurt or have some sort of issue to remind you that you're using them for your happiness.
I know I'd ask that question to people. I'm obsessed with relationship, right? It's my most fun obsession. Really, how do you relate to yourself? How do you relate to your environment? How do you relate to people in your life? And because I find that there's so much like information in there, and I'd ask the question, like, are you substituting your relationships with other humans in your life, romantic, business, friendships, with the relationship with your horse? And an overwhelmingly amount of people said yes. And I said, and if you're married, or you do have friendships, or you do have colleagues or whatever that you do talk to and you do stuff with, are you filling in the gaps with the relationship with your horse? And it was very much overwhelmingly yes. And then the third question was, is it safer to have a relationship with a horse or a human? And everyone said horse. And so it's interesting because we don't realize how much pressure we're putting on the relationships with our horse, and how much expectation we have around that, and what that feels like to be in relationship with like a friend, coworker, partnership, whatever, to have their happiness relying on their experience with you. Like,
Mhm.
Like, if I show up, this needs to happen, or I will be unhappy. And it's like, that is too much, dude. Like, too much. Get right with yourself. And then if you can't, that's fine. Go share space with your horse, but don't make it these are the expectations I have at the barn for me to feel better. Like, that's not a thing. Like, don't do that because they're gonna shut you down. Like
Mm-hmm.
any relationship will.
And you can be so well-meaning about it too, right? Like you can be so well-meaning, but even like when I think about my situation with Fern, I don't really have a timeline on her. I don't really have like a solid expectation, but I think the problem is that I moved away from inspiration and I
Mm,
immediately was like moved into that unintentional entitlement that we can get into where it's like these are the things, these are the steps that need to happen. And maybe that's like I don't know if entitlement is necessarily the word, but it's like that mindset of these are the steps that need to happen, the structure, whatever, in order for us to start moving forward together.
mm,
But I think it's like such a fine line in um sticking with the inspiration and the flow of things versus okay, we need to do this because now my mind is set on it and I have a goal or whatever, because we all know that as soon as we make a goal, our horses are like, are you sure about that? Because I don't know if I'm fully aligned with that. And not saying that every injury or even this injury, like I said before, this injury, if it even is an injury, I don't know, could have nothing to do with me, or it does have nothing to do with me. But then there's the piece that does have something to do with me. It's like such a complicated
Well,
thing.
you know what it is? It's that it's bringing up something in you, regardless of it has if it has anything to do with you. Like, it
Oh,
doesn't matter.
yeah.
It doesn't matter,
Yeah.
right? If it's bringing something up in you, no matter what the situation is, whether it's like you see someone on the street doing something, if it makes you feel a way, then I mean, it's for you. So I think that's like the mirror thing, where it's like,
Yeah.
it's not when I talk about mirror in the stall, you get people get real riled up. Like, they are not your mirror. They are an individual. I'm like, okay, but the mirror isn't you either. You know what I mean? When you look at the reflection in the mirror, you see what you see. You see through your stories, you see through your belief systems, you see in the mirror a reflection of your internal world. It's the same thing with horses, it's the same thing with other people. It's not that it is that, it is your understanding and your perception of what you're seeing. So if it brings something up in you, it doesn't matter if it has to do with you or not. It's still your work to do because you have feelings about it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It definitely makes sense. That's kind of cool to think about. How interesting. My mind went off on a miniature squirrel because I was like looking at your hand and thinking about tattoos and like how pain is contextual and how it's not always associated with suffering, and how sometimes people like good pain. Like I just got a tattoo, another one, because I was there getting my fingers touched up and I was like, can I get a word? Just there,
Right.
like inspired. I got Kip's name on my wrist. But it's just so funny because how pain is contextual and how some of us love getting tattoos and like the pain is totally worth it. And like
Yeah.
people go to the gym and they push through their pain.
It's the story.
It is the story. It's always the dang
Right? And
story.
it's the
Yeah.
chemicals your brain, because I've heard people talk about childbirth and how pain and something else, I can't remember what the other are, the same felt sensation. But when you have a story about this pain hurts, it's bad, it's never going to end, it's like suffering, then it changes your experience. Where there are people that will practice like the breath work and feeling the pain and the pressure, and they get euphoric. I haven't figured that
Oh.
out yet, and will never. But it's like the story around the actual pain. Am I in a lot of pain right now? Yes. How many times have I thought about it? Not until right this second. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
do I have full range of motion in my neck right now? No. Am I suffering through this call with you? Also, no, because my focus wasn't on it until I started thinking about pain. And then I was like, oh, my neck hurts. So I think when we look at animals and stuff and they're limping, or that doesn't mean they're like focused on it and obsessing over it. I limp all the time. My right ankle is, she got some hardware in there. It gets rainy, the rain's
I was
coming.
thinking of you today when I was cleaning my stalls and I rolled my ankle and I was like, damn, weak ass ankles.
Like, I got hardware in there. So the rain comes, there's arthritis. Like, but I'm not like, oh no, my ankle, like I hobble around for a couple days. Like, I don't know, I just go on with my life. So I think that like animals can have that lived experience as well, but we create suffering for ourselves when we see it happening. I did doing it with my dog. You know what I mean? So yes, there's interventions like don't just let your horses be dead lame and not try to figure it out. But you don't have to suffer for them. Like your suffering is not going to make their quality of life any better. Like
I
get back.
love Fern in that sense too, because
Oh
she
yeah.
tells me like I don't need a savior. And so I'm always trying to, if she has some sort of lameness or something, she's like, I don't need you to save me. Like, don't. And that's where it's so important. And the animals have been, that's like the Great Awakening and us not assuming that we know what's best for them and asking them, like, hey, do you want help? Do you want, so she'll let me put essential oils on her foot, and I can use the red light pads. And then when I go to like do the deep laser in her foot, she's like, nope. And she walks away. And, it's kind of fascinating. But I was telling Amber that she's like dead lame, and I released the resistance around that. I was like, you know what? If I'm meant to do something, like, what more can I do? Like, she's on great herbs. She's like, she's on minimal walking around, whatever. And then I'm like, and somehow she's just holding the leg up and sticking her ass in Biggie's face and getting mounted and bitten and pushed around, and then Kip was cantering around, got all crazy, and she's there hobbling behind him, like choosing to, and I'm like, all right, let her, just do. It has nothing to do with me. It's not my responsibility what she does with her body. And that's what we get wrapped up in as guardians of our animals, is we become so responsible for everything that happens, and then we get guilty, and then it's like all these things around that. But something that Amber and I have been practicing a lot, this, I would say, like at least very deliberately, the last 6 months we've been doing this, where we're just trying to see each experience in our life as a blessing, regardless of what it is, because there is truly always a blessing in every single thing that happens. Even the fact that we're just alive in these
I
bodies,
know.
experiencing life.
I know. It's wild. And it's like such an easy practice to do. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I think once you've done it and you do enough reflection back on the hard things in your life and how you're here now, it's like those moments when you're in it feel like they are never going to end. It feels like the end. Like it feels like the worst thing ever. But if you can always remember, everything always ends. Like the loops close eventually. Like, so if you can remind yourself this isn't forever. This hurts right now. I can acknowledge it right now. This really sucks, but it's not forever. You know what I mean? And that can help break that like pattern of the cycle of like, and you can go deeper and go, what is this about? Like, is there something within this I'm supposed to be learning? And we talked about in our membership, we talked about the suffering. If you find yourself in those patterns, that can be an indication for you to get curious and go deeper. Like, that's interesting. I really have a story around this. I wonder what that's about. How is it serving me? And initially, you can ask that question, and it feels really like, this is not serving me at all. This sucks. It is. If you're in it, it is somehow serving you. It's teaching you something. There's something in there to be extracted, and you should really extract it. So you don't have to keep learning it. Like, just go
Should
in and
really
figure it out.
extract it. Yeah, and I think what's cool about everything in our life experience is every single one of us can look back, and we all end up saying the same thing. I wouldn't have changed it because it
Mhm.
brought me to where I am and it made me who I am. And when we find the gratitude for where we are, how far we've come, who we've become, and we really just sit and recognize it, it's wild because you can talk to pretty much anybody and they're like, yeah, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change the past because I'm really happy with where I am. So, yeah,
Mhm.
everything in life is a blessing, which is so cool. Be blessed, people. Be blessed.
Go on with the rest of your week and be blessed.
Yes. Before we go, I do want to bring up that we are going back to the Salt River Mustangs in Arizona, April 6th through 8th. Flights just went down, which is
I
great. I bought
know.
my tickets
I'm
yesterday. They went down a
gonna
lot.
buy mine today.
Yeah. So, please join us. We have 3 spots available, potentially 4 spots available. It's an all-inclusive. We get this cargo van. It's freaking awesome. Bertha, she was a champ last time. We are staying at this. It's an all-inclusive event. So we will be shuttling you to and from the Mustangs. We stay right on the river at the Saguaro Lake Ranch. It's like nestled in the mountains and the hills, and we chased sunsets. I literally manifested everything I wanted. I wanted a lock of hair and a feather last time, got them both. It's just such a fun experience. It was so cool. We go to dinner, there's live music. Um, we meditate. It's a really cool experience. So if you are wanting to do that, please join us.
Yes, it is. It's really probably one of the most magical things we did last year for sure. I just loved that, like, within our experience, we were like, well, it was our first time and we kind of didn't know if we were going to be able to find the Mustangs. And it kind of felt like, oh God, like we have all these people here. What are we going to do? And then to be able to like walk down the rocks and we're kind of like looking, we knew we were headed in the right direction and you could hear them. That was like the
Hmm.
coolest. They're so chatty. They're so vocal. And then to find them and just sit with them, but then to be followed by them and surrounded by them was not something we expected. And also, we knew like the second night we really were like, oh, we want to have a different experience and we wanted to, the sunsets there were freaking amazing. So we went
Yeah.
to the high desert and had no expectations of seeing Mustangs. We were just like, we wanted to do a ceremony up there and have it be at beautiful sunset time. And we found that. And as we were like packing up to leave, we looked off in the distance and there was like a herd coming towards us, like that walked past and like wrapped it up for us. And so I will say that the energy of the group, it's a small, intimate group because we don't want to be like a big, giant mob moving through. So we keep it small, but it's pretty potent and the Mustangs really like it. So most likely you'll get to have a really, probably an
Yeah.
experience you wouldn't have if you were just there by yourself.
Yes, it was super cool. And actually, to end this on the note of, you know, pain and suffering and all the things, on that high desert experience, there was a Mustang that was limping down the
Mm.
mountain. And it was really like beautiful to see because we all just kind of witnessed the care that the other Mustangs had. They kept stopping and waiting, and one would circle back and like wait for him. And um, yeah, and it was so interesting because there was that moment of us being like, oh man, he's limping. And then we were like, oh, he's fully supported by his family. Like he's going to be okay.
Yeah, it was really cool. So if you
Yeah.
guys are interested in that, we'll put the link in the show notes. And if you guys are interested in the membership, we have our tea talks that we do, but those are exclusive for our membership, mind, body, spirit of different hot topics in the equine world. Like we did trailering, we just did end of life today, and we did blanketing before that. We do release the trailering one publicly. So if you guys want a little tasty taste of that, I'll put the link in the show notes for you there as well. And you can check that out. So if you guys like this episode, share it with your friends. You gotta leave us a review. We're on fast track for growth for the pod this year. So you can support us, then we would be ever so grateful.
Yes.
All right.
All
Thank you
right.
guys for hanging out.
Be blessed.
No suffering.